Good morning and welcome to the Urban and Economic Development Committee meeting. Today's September 10th. I'm Councilor Bellis chairing this meeting. First item on the agenda, I call this meeting to order. Second item on the agenda, Patrick Connolly, reappointment to the Tulsa Authority for the Recovery of Energy. Term expires July 31st, 2028. Attended the majority of the meetings from Council District 4. All right. Welcome everybody. Hi. Hey Pat, thanks so much for being with us. If you could share a bit about your experience serving on the TARE board and why you'd like to continue serving.
I've been on the TARE board for about 11 years, and I want to continue to serve because we're getting ready to, we're right in the process of awarding a new contract for collections of the waste, and I want to be there for that transition and help with that and use my experience for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Councilor Gilbert.
Hi, Mr. Conley.
Hi.
Good morning. How
Good
are
to see
you?
you.
Good to
Good.
see you.
Good.
So, do you just enjoy talking trash?
Yeah.
Just trash talk.
It was, we interviewed, it's interesting, we interviewed some vendors for the collection system, and they all
Yeah.
said they're garbage men and were proud of it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And my lovely wife, she calls it the white trash report, so she's a real funny girl. So.
She is one of the funniest people.
I do enjoy it, it's a good, it's you know, it's interesting, and we're still trying to, you know, our major, after awarding the contracts for our major functions, we still are working very hard to get down the contamination in the recycling system. That's kind of one of our big priorities. We're really focused on that.
That's great.
It's very difficult. I think we've got it down to below 30, but it's still a struggle, and we're always looking for ways to improve that. But everything else is going pretty well. The trash and energy plant's back online. It's renovated. Our current vendor who collects our trash does a great job, and typically has a high rating in all the city surveys. So it's going pretty well, except for that contamination.
Yeah. Well, thank you for continuing to serve. You've been on there since we converted to the cart-based system, right?
Right after that,
Yeah.
pretty soon after
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah. So you've been there from the
Yeah.
get-go, and I appreciate you staying on there and seeing it all out. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Auden, I really appreciate it, and just so other folks know, like, I got a lot of questions recently related to, right, incineration and things like that, and you were incredibly helpful when I called with lots of questions to make sure I could actually get back to constituents and help them understand, and it gave me a great appreciation for what you all do at TARE, because I wouldn't want to have to navigate the complexities of waste disposal contracts.
Yeah.
And I know that was a big election kind of and citywide issue right before you came onto the chair board, so that must have been interesting to inherit the next steps there, or for the counselors that were here at the time.
It was an
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting is a great word.
yes. Is there anything else you think we should know related to what the chair board's doing right now, just as a quick, while you're here, curiosity?
I think I've mentioned the major things, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Well, we will be voting on this on the 17th, at the 5 PM meeting. You were welcome to attend, but not required to.
It's at 5?
Yeah, yeah, if you wanna come in, then, you know, there's always an opportunity if you wanna come up and talk to us again during that time. You can, but again, you don't actually have to be there if you don't feel like it.
And it's a Wednesday? It's Wednesday, you want me on Wednesday? Okay.
Yeah.
I've gotten out of the, so,
Out of the routine.
Yeah.
yeah, it's, the half-life of a city hall employee is about a week. If you aren't at the table every day, you lose it quickly. After a year, you're,
So there's hope for all of us.
yeah, there
Good
is.
to know.
There is.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Good to see y'all.
Good to see you.
As well. All right, we are on agenda item 3. Sorry, I only made it through one item before the rest of the counselors got here. I was gonna try to rush through. All right. I was like, all right, agenda item 3, ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to make supplemental appropriations of $3,846,136 within the general fund, the short-term capital fund, the equipment management services fund, the One Technology Center fund, the stormwater enterprise fund, and the TMUA water operating fund, and the TMUA sewer operating fund, fiscal year 2026 start of year. And we have Jared from finance to tell us about it.
Council, Jared Moore from Budget. I can go into this one as much or a little detail as you are comfortable with. I kind of alluded to this one at the last meeting. This is largely administrative in nature. A lot of these were items that were included in all of these were included in the FY25 budget. They were unable to be put under contract before the year ended because when you're moving $1 billion budget between years, using governmental accounting principles and such, everything has to stick nicely in one fiscal year or the other, so we have to have hard dates for closing dollars, moving dollars, et cetera. So these were not able to get encumbered, they were all in lapsing funds, so they go back to cash balance. This is just picking them back up where they were left off, putting them back into place as appropriations, so the departments can continue with the purchase orders and contracts that they were mid-process in at the end of June 30, 2025. And I can go down each of the funds if you're interested in the nature of each of them.
Okay, great. We will move on to agenda item 4, ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to make supplemental appropriations of $403,212.86 recognized from revenues received within the Tourism Improvement District 1 Fund Managed Entities Collections.
This is appropriating $403,212.86 of fund balance in the Tourism Improvement District Fund. This is, again, by nature, kind of a year-end process. By ordinance, all of these revenues are to be turned over to the Improvement District Company. These dollars came in and were, finished and validated after the fiscal year ended for FY25. Dollars lapsed, but cash is there, so we are putting them into appropriations so they may be turned over per the ordinances. This is kind of just a wrap-up transaction of FY25.
Okay. Any questions there? All right. Agenda item 5. Ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to make supplemental appropriations of $38,220 recognized from grant revenues to be received from the District Attorney's Council within the Victims of Crime Act subfund for forensic nurse services.
This is appropriating a new grant award to the police department from the District Attorney's Council grant. It is for the Victims of Crime Act, and it will fund services for emotional and physical support, stabilization assistance, and the guidance through the criminal system. The police department uses these services throughout the year, and they are greatly appreciated. This will just put those dollars in place so that they can then use the grant.
It's exciting that there's scaling some of the programming for that. Okay, we are on agenda item 6, if there are any questions. All right, ordinance amending the fiscal year 2025-2026 budget to make supplemental appropriations of $20 million from revenue received from the sale of sewer revenue bonds within the 2025 Sewer Revenue Bond Fund, Hakey Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant Fertilizer Production Facility. Glamorous.
Very. This is just the final step of the 2025 city water revenue bonds. We're in the process of being sold. We'll close next week on it. This is just appropriating the 20 million of those bonds. They will be used as the city's half of the match towards a USDA grant for constructing a fertilizer plant out at Hickey Creek plant. And if you are curious in more of the details behind the plant, I have much smarter people behind me that might be able to field those questions.
Alright, you mentioned a USDA grant, is that one we've already received?
Yes, well, it's,
We haven't received the funds, but they've committed the 9.6 million.
Right.
It's 9.6 million.
Okay,
it's a nuanced word. We're finishing the agreement to receive it right now,
okay,
but they are committed.
okay, that's good news.
It's the grant Eric talked about when we did the biosolids presentation in the legislative form.
Okay.
Is that right?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay, thank you for connecting that dot. Any other inquiries on this one? Alright, moving right along, oh, is that everything from
Yes, ma'am.
here? Okay, we're
Thank you.
moving into the zoning portion of our programming. Alright, item 7, rezoning application Z7824 from RS3 and AG to OL with an optional development plan for property located at the southeast corner of 101st and South Florence Avenue. And we've never discussed this property before.
All new.
That's not true, we haven't. Okay.
Well, I think you all are very familiar. Nathan Foster with the Planning Office. This is a 9.5 acre tract at the southeast corner of East 101st Street and South Lawrence Avenue. Currently split zoning between AG and RS3. The history on this is that it previously came to you all with a request for OL and an optional development plan. The previous optional development plan that you all voted on excluded a use category for 3 households or more on a single lot. So it excluded apartments, cottage house developments, mixed-use buildings in that capacity. That item ultimately failed, and so the applicant returned with a new request. This is again a request for OL, office light, with an optional development plan, with the optional development plan this time including those uses that are 3 households or more on a single lot. So the ODP does include apartments, mixed-use buildings, cottage house developments that would be permitted uses if this were adopted as presented. The neighbors of this project have submitted and we validated a protest petition. So as you can see on your screen, we received signed protest petitions from all the property owners in the orange. One caveat is that we did actually receive a petition from the one excluded residential lot. However, due to a technicality with our ordinance requiring it to be a cursive original signature, we couldn't accept an e-signature. So that's something that we've discussed internally as something we may get fixed in our code to allow for e-signatures in the future,
We
but
should definitely change that.
yeah, I think
in process.
for modernization purposes, that will be something we bring to you guys at a later date as just an update to our zoning ordinance. But if that were to be accepted, that would mean that all of the residential lots within the radius had signed the petition. The exclusion would have been the property owned by Jenks Public Schools to the north, both on either side of the right-of-way, the 2 remaining pieces. So for that, the protest petition, what it means is that a 2/3 majority of counselors are required to vote to pass any change in the zoning on this property. That means 7 counselors.
3/4.
Oh, 3/4, my apologies. Seven counselors will have to vote in favor of any motion in order for any change to take effect. So, with that in mind, the optional development plan that you have in your backup is what the applicant has submitted, and it does still include the apartments that were previously taken out. So, I don't know if Councilor Archie or Councilor Lakin want to shed additional light into discussions that have happened up to this point, but that's where we are.
Sure, I
So you
mean,
can go first, I'll go.
sure, you have to, excuse me, I'm just feeling under the weather, but 100%. Essentially, of property owners have used the processes that we've set out for them to express their desire. I think there's a lot of frustration in that we, as a council, collectively said, work with the property owner, work with the developers, everybody work together, come up with a path forward that works. The original ODP, which allowed for 2 units, which would be duplexes, or single-family homes, I don't have the number here, but 6 acres, which is the developable, 6 of the 9 you could develop. You could get probably 50 or 60 single-family, twice that many duplexes.
Well,
The
twice the many units.
units,
Yeah,
right, and then you divide them into, so the community was willing to accept up to 120 units of housing on that property. And we told them, no, I mean, essentially, as a body, we told them no. So they feel betrayed, the broker feels frustrated, and so, you know, that's, then they use this petition to sort of express that, you know, they don't mind housing, they just don't want a particular sort of housing development. And so they've been a part of the process the entire time. You know, I'm not sure what other counselors are willing to do, and so definitely open to conversations, but I've gotten a lot of mail over this, a lot of emails and whatnot. Now, what we have to also do is kind of pan back, and it's so hilarious because the broker is telling us, for this land to be profitable, Anthony, for the project to pencil, it has to be OL. Like, we like managing commercial as opposed to residential. So like the even if it's zoned for apartments, even if it's zoned for single or duplexes, they're telling us, well, the likelihood that they're gonna put housing on this land is relatively low. So it's like it's not a discussion about if there's gonna be housing, like the likelihood of it being high. It's like there's the potential that if it's sold, the person who develops it could possibly, if they think it's profitable, put housing on it. So it's like a contingency of a contingency. Also, we've had other zoning changes where we've had ODPs that have been accepted. So I think it's been a process. We've all worked together for it. The residents are not opposed to housing necessarily. They just are opposed to the apartment portion of it. So anyway, those are my ramblings.
I would just follow on. I agree with what Counselor Archie has said. The original ODP that came before us that was ultimately voted down had the opportunity for 55 single-family units or 110 to 120 duplexes. As it is before us today, I can't support it. Obviously, 100% of the residents don't support it in the area. As Counselor Archie said, we beg developers to go talk to the residents. And I don't know, a handful do, and most don't. They come to us and have us be the arbitrator for it. And that's not been the case here. We worked really, really hard. We had a very difficult conversation at Jenks Middle School where we had 60 people who said nothing but single family, or leave it just as it is, or do anything but what the developer wants to do. And through a lot of conversation and through a lot of hard work, we got them to where, or they got themselves to where they eventually agreed to single-family homes, office light, and duplexes on that lot. So that's what I'll continue to support, but I'm not supporting the apartment addition, just given the desires of both parties in this situation.
Okay, Counselor Dr. Wright.
Thank you. I just want to go back to some things I just heard here. So 100% of the residents don't support?
No, 100% of the petition.
Everyone in that zone, all residents and owners signed that?
Yes.
Okay. And
The one,
do we have precedent in the
that
city
one
for
yellow,
when that happens? Besides just having a 7 of 9 to override?
It's probably been rare that
Yeah.
we've received a petition where, 100% of the residential lot owners have signed it.
Did it happen with the hotel across from ORU or something similar?
No.
Okay, it didn't, okay.
In fact, the issue with the hotel across from ORU was that most of the surrounding properties were commercial properties or ORU or Victory Christian. And so I don't think they actually ended up meeting the threshold on that petition, but I can't remember for sure. But yeah, I can't think of a case in recent years where we had 100% of the
And,
folks.
and what's that number?
You mean the lot
Yeah.
count? That's a great question.
I'd test it.
Could probably count them here if you guys wanna keep.
I don't know.
We can come, if you wanna count them, while we can move forward with questions.
Yeah,
We
so
can
that,
count them.
that's one of my questions, how many actual property owners are in that 100%? The other thing is, the intent is office use according to the applicant.
That's all.
Office light
Office light,
to do
yeah.
office use because it doesn't really pencil out to do residential. We as a body decided because of our housing needs, that office light by right could have density. So, you know, I don't think we wanna go back on that. I can appreciate that a neighborhood organized and signed. That has happened in a lot of our other parts of town where we as leaders have said we're committed to creating more housing and we've had to push back. Now, this 100% petition, that's why I asked the question, like, how often has that happened? Cause I don't have a recollection. We've obviously received like, you know, enough people putting their names on a signature, but not in this like legal way, so.
And I think some of them, the neighborhood just hasn't been able to get in contact with the property owner. So, you know, that's been a case in a lot of previous protest petitions.
Right, right.
They just weren't reachable.
So
Right.
it looks like approximately 37.
37 property owners
Residential
equals
lots.
100%.
Right. And then, I mean, yes.
To block 110 to 120 duplex units?
No, this
No,
is,
no.
well,
No.
so.
Yeah, what's the unit difference, to tag on to that, like,
So we have to rewind a little bit. The neighbors were in agreement last time this came before the council that they would be okay with the optional development plan that still permitted single-family and duplexes.
And that's the 55 and 110 that Councilor Lake
Right,
was talking
yeah,
about, okay.
and that's based on like 55 lots being platted out for single-family purposes or for
maximum.
duplex
Right.
purposes.
what's the
Um,
maximum with this?
So this is a little bit more nuanced because it would allow apartments, one, and it's difficult, this is a conversation that we've had with Councilor Archie and Councilor Lake, and it's difficult to know what the unit max would be under apartments, because we don't have density requirements the same way for apartments. We have building area allowances. So we determine how much building can go on this lot, and how they divvy it up into a unit is really an architectural question more than a zoning question. So you could theoretically get a significant amount of apartments on a 9.5 acre tract, let's say 6 acres of it being developable, by just taking that pure building area that's allowed and then saying they do all efficiencies. That would be a considerable amount of units that would be allowed.
Did you have more questions, Councilor Victoria? Let's see, I have myself and then Councilor Dutton. I think, thanks for checking out the precedent. I know like 37, especially proximity, can seem like a lot. I think my pause, or just something I just want to express to my colleagues related to some of this, and trust me, I've been in these really contentious rezone situations between neighborhood, developer, you know, the whole series of meetings where we don't land in a good place, or we do go into a good place where people are in agreement, but external people feel differently, or, you know, zoning is one of the most contentious things we deal with at the table. And I think the two things, and I think we've seen this through so much of the work that this whole body has done when it comes to housing and homelessness issues, is that it's about, to me, the precedent we're setting when we are putting restrictions on housing and making that a continued habit, or further stigmatizing housing, or, you know, actually amplifying fears related to housing density when we do things. And so to me, it's more of a precedent concern paired with that, what happens with how much we micromanage through optional development plans. There are times when they're appropriate, but I think what we see happen is we end up putting more and more and more restrictions on properties in a way that can actually really restrict or even long-term harm their possibilities or property values or so much else. And so to me, my bigger concern here is thinking beyond just 37, but to, you know, the total populace of like the city or our whole entire, like, you know, MSA, like the whole area, which is like just it's a precedent issue to me about, and I remember something Councilor Bengal said during the vote last time, just related to if we're saying, you know, it's okay for density to happen here but not in this other place. And I understand this is very much a hypothetical, because that's not really the property owner's intent. But I think setting a precedent or saying as a policy position that we think it's of interest in an area like this or anywhere to restrict certain housing types where, you know, it's recommended or we're being told by other experts that it is an appropriate use or does fit within a comprehensive plan is just concerning to me. And so I'm just really reticent to further stigmatize and restrict housing options or to also micromanage property through ODPs, because I think it's a way that I think that's the kind of stuff that actually scares other developers away. So I'm thinking about those unintended consequences of what we do that could really deter other development, even elsewhere in the city, when they know, oh, if I have to go through a rezone, the city council is going to restrict the number that I can build here. It's going to put all these additional restrictions that could increase my costs or make this unfeasible. I worry that it just sends a bad message to other developers in the city. Councilor Dutton?
Yeah, so the last time this came before us, I think there was discussion regarding the acreage. Wasn't it 2-3 acres that were gonna be designated for possible residential with a total of 12 that was discussed?
No, I think the only conversation we had around the actual acreages was the part being set aside for floodplain purposes, for one. The applicant in this case has not ever laid out any sort of residential use. When they actually came to us, their initial proposal was, we want a new light office.
Right.
That was their goal. But they are looking to sell portions of this property, and so their original kind of statement was they wanted as many options as they could have in what would be allowed under that OL zoning, which is what I think initially led to this conversation about whether apartments would stay in or come out. It wasn't that they had an apartment developer ready to go and they were gonna build apartments, it was just that they aren't sure on some portion of this property what they will
Well,
have interest.
I think I remember him speaking, and I had asked that question about the acreage that he would consider, just in case, hypothetically, of course. And I think the amount of homes that he stated or residential would be 12, so it's minimal at best. And so to throw this number 120 out there as an option, I think is just not reasonable. And it puts the fear of possible east and north side residents wanting to come suddenly live in God's country. But also, I want to comment that the cost of living in that area would totally surpass any kind of affordable housing, that it would preempt the kind of apartment people that they're considering opposing and wanting in their area. So I have issues still in that, as Councilor Bellis also said, that it can affect how developers are going to perceive areas of Tulsa instead of considering areas of Tulsa just as a general to be able to develop. And the pushback to me is unfounded because it's still hypothetical.
Councilor Lakin?
Yeah, I would just say to those comments, we spend a lot of time planning for the what ifs, and I think we probably had a dozen ODPs go through between the time that we first talked about this and today. I know that we've bitten our tongues a couple of times when we're like, yeah, that seems reasonable to put an ODP on a zoning amendment, because we think it's reasonable to put those additional restrictions in place or additional conditions in place because we do want to protect the residents in everybody's various districts. We rely on each other to really provide a lot of advice as we're running through this. To your 120 comment, 120 is the number of units that were agreed to by the developer and the residents. So it's not a hypothetical. It's a real possibility, and that's what the residents said they were okay with.
Only in
Up to-
duplexes, though, not in a multifamily.
Yeah, but it's still 120. It doesn't.
Oh, I get it, but it would be 120 on all of the land versus 120, I think, in a 2 acre,
Yeah, because I think they
35
would
foot
say
I'm just-
restricted.
acreage.
Right,
That
I'm
was the
just telling you
conversation.
what the numbers were. with respect to
Yeah.
what the residents and the developers agreed to. And I would say 80 or 90% of the people, and you can attest to this, didn't want anything on the land, no kind of residential uses.
Right.
Well, other than single family, whenever we first started this, so,
Which it's already zoned for, plus ag, right?
yeah. It doesn't really matter what that is, it matters what the conversation was around, within that.
I'm just
middle school.
clarifying that by right today, we could put single family on there
Yes, so
as it is zoned
the
right
west
now.
half
Well-
is already zoned RS3 and would allow
Right.
a certain amount of just single-family 60-foot wide lots.
Right.
I don't know what the math is on that, I don't think we've ever calculated it. And you can do single-family and AG, they're restricted to 2-acre lots, which is
Right.
all over density, but.
Yeah, so there was movement on the residential side, as they understood what could be allowed in OL.
And Counselor Archie and then Counselor Bengal.
For sure, I appreciate it. All these comments, of course, support the work that we've done bringing together residents to work on this. To your point earlier, Councilor Bellis, I do think it's really important that we create a smooth pathway for developers who want to come in the city, not to feel particularly burdened or, put through an onerous process. But I think I do want to set an expectation for developers who are coming into the city or are in the city, that if you're going to develop in Tulsa, you're going to have to interface with residents. In fact, later in this agenda, we have one of those developers here who did this very well, and there's a project that is going to bring multiple hundreds of properties here to the city. So I don't want to, I don't represent corporations, I don't represent special interests. We want to hear from residents, and let's interface with them, and let's figure out if we can't have a path forward. And I think, in the original ODP, like we said, potentially it could have been hundreds of homes as a hypothetical, but, the ODP that we have now also includes those apartments. But, yeah, we have to interface with the residents.
Is this a direct response to, okay, and then I'll go to Counselor Bengal, if you're tagging on to what he said.
No, it was
Okay.
tagging on to
Okay,
apartments and cost.
okay, then I'll go to Counselor Bengal next. I think you had your hand.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah. I was gonna defer to her if it was directly in response, but it's
Before
not.
we get in our feelings about our zoning issues, I want to remind you guys the paces that I went through when I went through a zoning case last year. And the challenges that were put before me in challenging my own district in supporting of a zoning issue. So what I won't do is support your feelings about what, I even had my own integrity and character impugned at the 5 o'clock meeting publicly. So I'm not gonna listen to this garbage. I also have a multifamily development that is going at 137th East Avenue and 21st Street for zoning that has been there since 1970. My neighbors aren't gonna get it to be able to challenge the type of housing that is being put there. So, Counselor Bellis, since we're talking about a previous OL zoning where we adopted an ODP, I expressed some public safety concerns about that specifically. Now, I have not heard one thing in this discussion, and I did express regret in voting allowing multifamily as part of OL zoning. I am the only person that I'm aware of that expressed the regret in supporting that, because I didn't feel like, I did have some apprehension in voting for that. I have not heard anything other than, if you listen to the planning meeting or the TMAPC meeting, you heard what I felt was poor language about renters. It sounded like trash is how this was framed. You had the broker calling me out personally. And to me, quite frankly, I find it unsavory that we're sitting here trying to justify our own behaviors because it's beneficial to us, and we don't remember some of the other behaviors around the table. If there was something legitimate, like some geographical issues or something that would inhibit them from being able to do these types of developments, I would totally support that. But this, all I heard was my property value. I have property values in East Tulsa as well that are significantly lower, I will bet, than the folks that live here. And when we have the conversation about apartment complexes, the property values have a different meaning here than they do in East Tulsa. So I'm telling you right now, unless you can come to the table with some legitimate reasoning why they shouldn't allow apartments over there, I can't see any reason not to support it.
Okay, we can move on to the next.
Oh, I
Oh,
have
you did,
one.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Sorry, I was just
So-
trying to, I was like, that was like,
I know.
I just
that's
wanted
stellar.
to, like, do a little
appreciate that,
checkbox, yeah.
Counselor Bangle, a lot. I also want to bring attention to the fact that it's not just South Tulsa that has the higher property values and people that don't, that have an idea, as Counselor Bangle said, about a stigma of apartment dwellers. We have downtown apartments that go for over 2,000 a month, easy. And you don't see downtown that stigma that, oh my God, we don't want these apartment dwellers here. Because they're unsavory or they're on vouchers or whatever have you. So we have areas of Tulsa where the neighborhoods have been engaged a lot, and most developers do engage with the neighborhood, to your point. So the fact that the property values, as Councilor Bangle said, are definitely going to be different, and the rental costs for an apartment in that area is going to be far different than any apartment that you're gonna find in District 3. You're not gonna find the same type of people that are wanting to rent and pay that amount. So to use the fact that apartment dwellers and that whole stigma of we don't want these type of people in our neighborhood, to me is just, we're missing out on traveling nurses, we're missing out on engineers that are here, for however long. We're missing out on professional lodging for a lot of valuable professionals in a much higher income bracket than we're talking in other areas. So I just wanted to clarify and thank Councilor Bangle for your comments there.
Councilor Lakin?
I would say those professionals and others who you were just mentioning could live in those 110 to 120 potential units that could go on that site. I've really only corresponded with the HOA reps. And their main focus with respect to some of what you were saying, Councilor Bingle, is that, on all three sides, because you can't really take the Jinx Middle School as a fourth side because it is just a educational use, is all single-family residential. So I think that we would have less pushback if it was on the edge of something, on a corner, but I've heard, and I don't think this is the correct term, kind of like an infill project where you're putting dense housing in between single-family housing on all sides. So that tends to be the concern from the ones that Councilor Archie and I are talking to. Of course, whenever you have public comment, you get the comments of anybody who would be able to share their opinion and why they would be concerned about it, and so you will hear the variety of things that you've heard. But from the pragmatic standpoint, from those who have been at the table and have really done a lot of negotiating with the developer, that's I think why they got to the place where they were comfortable with some level of density that's beyond single family. So they were willing to make those amends where they, it's not single family, it could be single family, but it could be a little bit more dense than that too. But they just didn't go so far as the ultra dense option, given where it geographically lies.
Yeah, maybe I would tag team
Okay.
on what you're saying here. When they talk about single
We can
family.
do that, I mean,
No, I know.
Single family
Sorry, I had a
homes.
line go, I got a list going, go ahead. No,
Single-
it's okay.
Single-family homes being all around the property, and then having apartments. A lot of folks will make the argument about context, you know, is it placed right, or traffic. You know, will a great number of apartments, or even single-family or duplexes, add to that 101st corridor? So I have not participated or countenanced or approved any sort of language that denigrates apartment dwellers. I lived in an apartment for many years. We have 61st and Peoria, which I love that corridor, a tremendous concentration of apartments. And I'm hoping that we're gonna support additional apartments here later in the agenda. Yes, when you have public comment, folks, you know, can share some of those views, but there have been arguments made other than apartment people bad, you know, house owners good, that they've kind of brought to the table that maybe justify their opposition.
Yeah.
Even though I acknowledge there is a stigma, the question is, do we want to use this as a test case to put our flag in the ground when there are other projects that will bring more housing that we can all support together?
Hold on, we got a list, which includes
Yeah.
me, so. Clarifying questions for Nathan. One, I do wanna say, because I think this happens all the time, they're related to traffic stuff, and then I have two questions for Nathan and or Susan. For some reason in my head, it's Nathan, cause he's holding some of those papers. But real quick, like,
Research going.
we hear often without evidence that people have traffic concerns, and let's be honest, that's often just a proxy, easy thing to say that feels more politically correct than just admitting that we're worried about people in poverty living near us, which again, per Councilor Dunn's point, isn't really even the proposition here. I just wanted us to be honest, we often come up with all these different proxy reasons that you hear people kind of bring out every single time you have a rezone, and sometimes there are real authentic concerns, you know, related to where you end up with traffic studies and things like that, like when the Chick-fil-A came into my district, and sadly not Councilor Bengal's district, I'm sorry, I would give it to
I
you.
would have
if I could.
taken both of them.
I know, if I could have given you that Chick-fil-A, I would have,
I would have taken the hospitality house and the Chick-fil-A.
But you know, that was one of those things where it's like, okay, that creates a lot of a certain type of traffic. They had done their studies, you know, there's moments where you can see there's authenticity to that argument that are very clear. And then there's other ones where it's just used as this like kind of specter of something that's easier to say than the real underlying concern people have, and you know that it's like the more publicly acceptable thing to voice than the reality of what you seem to be concerned about, or that, you know, and I get it. I know people who, you buy something, you're next to an open field, you're like, oh great, I'll be next to this, and then stuff develops around it because time moves on, and that's not what you maybe thought you bought initially, but that is something that can always happen because people have their property rights to do stuff with their property. My question real quick though, is this in it because it's OL, there's a 35-foot maximum height to anything that gets built, so that by nature restricts density anyway. Is that accurate? Is that like,
Yeah.
just
no,
double
that's-
checking?
That's true. I
So
mean, it would
we're
be the
not
same-
talking like,
Same height maximum
Yeah.
as all the surrounding
so no one's
areas.
building like the MGM Grand here, okay. And that, like, or could, ever, okay. And then other clarifying question, hold on, I was looking at, I have a piece of paper in front of me. Okay, my other clarifying question is, from what you've observed in the past when you have, like, you know, you add in some density or mixed income housing from an urban design planning standpoint, does that, like, especially in your, I'm thinking of something like a school, if you do add in some density, is that, like, I'm just trying to understand from an urban planning perspective, is that usually like a good thing? Is that considered bad urban planning? You know, if you're like, oh, hey, we're gonna add in some commercial, some housing, there's a school right here, is that just like, is that potentially bad planning or design? I'm just trying to understand the,
I mean, I
I
think
see Susan too.
you'd have a hard time finding a planner to tell you that the density's bad.
Right.
I mean, I think that adding density to a site like this and providing an opportunity for more individuals to have access to that school and to those services would be a good thing. As it relates to traffic, traffic is often a perception of the person that's telling you they're in traffic, and some people differ in what they believe is an actual problem. I understand there are congestion issues here with the school, with drop-off and pickup times that people have experienced. 101st is not a fully improved widened roadway, but it is an arterial with the ultimate dedications of right-of-way being set up to be constructed to that point. And I think we have those conversations a lot with new development, especially in areas of town where those infrastructure improvements have not happened yet, that a lot of times that's what we see. We see the development come first, and then the demand later projects us into making improvements. And Councilor Mingus giggling because it's.
Yeah, I know that's your favorite thing to hear, but it's just true.
Yeah,
Not a buyer.
and I think that's the nature of it, but yeah, I think at a reasonable level, like what OL would allow, I don't perceive like density at this level to be a bad planning decision.
Okay.
And I think that's why we originally, to the commission, recommended approval of just OL zoning without the ODP, but.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful clarification. Okay, I have Counselor Dectoray, Bengal, and Dutton, did I miss anything?
Thank you. Just Susan, or, on the 6-2, was it the county that split?
It was
Was Mike Craddock and Shane
Shane
Hood.
Hood,
Okay.
so a city and a county
Okay.
person.
I just always like to ask that question.
Mhm.
So let me start with the last thing first on my list.
We looked at another case, let me just double check that.
Having infill next to existing residential is what we've been doing in District 7 for the last 10 or 15 years, so I get a little heartburn around that assertion that like we have existing single-family homes that have been there 30 or 40 years, and then we can't take on apartments, because that's exactly what's happened all along Mingo, Memorial, Garnett. And to Counselor Dutton's point, those apartments that have gone in that corridor are commanding the smallest unit, $1,500 rent or higher, which is higher than the mortgages of the existing, $350,000 homes in close proximity. So I know that growth is scary, especially if you've lived in a community that has been largely ag and undeveloped, and people like their green belts, and, I get it. I live in a neighborhood that's backs up to Meadowbrook, and that's gonna have housing there someday. But people that bought their homes thought they were gonna be living on a country club setting for, however long they are there. So it's the growing pains. I think this is a desirable location, as we've heard. My question is, or just clarifying, as it exists right now, RS3 and ag, if it does not change, housing can go there. We've established that, and some other things. There's a lot of things by right on ag that can happen in the city, including grow facilities, and I always just do want to emphasize that is by right today. A grow facility could go on ag in any part of the city, and a lot of ag near existing housing. I also have that in my district. So I'm gonna go back to this ODP, 55 single family, 110, 120 duplexes. That's the previous one though, that failed, right? That's not what we're considering here now.
Right.
Are you suggesting that we bring that one back as a swap?
I'm just saying that's what was voted down.
Yeah, I know.
That opportunity
I
was
was
voted
one
down.
of the people that voted it down, so.
Yep.
But in the comments for today's agenda, this new optional development plan is the one that then adds this element if whoever buys it wants to do the thing. I just wanna go back and say, right now with this OL, there's no suggestion of housing. Just the potential down the line, possibly, maybe.
And there's definitely the statement multiple times from the developer that he wants to sell the lots.
Yes,
There's no.
but he could
Which
sell
is
the
his
lots right
right.
now and
Yeah,
have
that's his
housing put
right.
on that.
So one thing I'll
Not-
mention too is
Not with that apartment level.
Okay, but some sort of, no office at all, no commercial at all, just housing. So
He doesn't own the property.
the developer doesn't own the
It's a
property.
broker.
No.
Yeah, the
Okay.
applicant in this instance is a broker representing a church that owns this property and is trying to sell.
Right.
Okay, but the
LDS
church right
church.
now, if they sold to a different developer, that developer could just come in and do the housing piece only.
And just to clarify, the duplex and single-family option is not eliminated from the one that's before you now. It was
Yeah.
just, we've just added to it.
Right, because
Okay.
they're trying to pick up the one more vote to get across the line, is what, it was a 5-4 vote predicated on density not being included. So if you add this concession, which is just a concept of a plan, not actually a plan, then maybe they get that 1 or 2 or 3 more to bring it across, but I just wanted to clarify that we're not asking to go back to the former ODP that failed as like a substitute for
Right, that's
this.
not what's proposed.
I know, but just like, if that were proposed, maybe that changes the conversation, I don't know. This one is adding the density that some of us objected to not including last time, but now we'll need 7 of 9 of us to say yes, and that is scheduled for a second reading on the 17th. And the reason it's
No,
The main
it's
vote is
voted
tonight,
tonight.
though.
Oh, it's tonight.
Right.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And the main, the reason it's now 7 of 9 is because of these 37 property owners signing the 100% objection. So for tonight, if we get 7 of 9, it approves this, which is, still could do the 55 single family or the 110 to 120 duplexes, or restricted height, 35-foot, some sort of multifamily, still knowing that they have to meet like all the other requirements.
Right.
Okay. The final question I have is, was there any consideration in your discussions with this broker to consider like corridor zoning or some other pathway to achieving the commercial element?
I've not spoken about corridor zoning.
Yeah, I don't
No.
recall.
I mean, they originally approached us with a request, they were wanting to see commercial zoning. We advised them, we didn't think we could support commercial zoning at this location because of the breadth of uses that would have been allowed under commercial
Sure.
zoning. So that's why they ultimately went with an OL
So
request.
OL is the most restrictive that would allow some sort of commercial use.
Yeah, it got them to the original concept of some orthodontist's office, some light office
Daycare or
type
something.
uses, and without opening up the door to a lot of the retail, restaurant, car sales, things that would
And that
not
would
be
also be
done.
on corridor zoning, you could have more retail elements and.
Corridor's a little bit more unique because corridor, we write a development plan. So rather than taking an existing OL zoning and then restricting it through an ODP, we're writing a development plan with allowable uses into it.
Yeah.
And so the discussion about apartments being in or out, I think would still be there in
Sure.
a corridor discussion. It would
Well,
be-
as you know, that's what I've used
Right,
when with
yeah.
those existing single-family, 40-year-old homes of a higher, property value, get this commercial interest on ag land for rezoning. We've done corridor zoning, specifically on Mingo between 81st and 91st. Out 91st to 101st on Granette, we've taken on like 1,000 units. Again, initial rents are starting at like $1,500 a month. So it is definitely the professional workforce that is moving into these places that want proximity to highways, to amenities, that don't want to live in the downtown urban core, even though they probably could afford to. I'm with my colleagues here that in this space and time, we cannot enable discrimination against density where it makes sense to be. It seems like it could make sense here if and or maybe it gets sold and the person can pencil it out, which is a lot of there's a lot of questions around that. Seems like the office part of it is really where they're trying to go. And the if and or maybe on 2 acres of some sort of housing, while a concern to the existing neighbors, I think as strategy for how we're looking at land use and meeting all the needs of Tulsa today and in the future, with a restricted height of 35 feet, knowing what the rents would go for, I mean, you're probably gonna either stack, 25 units in a 3-story building or do duplexes side by side at the most, because it is in floodplain too, and there's a big chunk of this that can't be developed out at all.
So, Counselor, just to clear Shane Hood's name. Because that's a later
It's a
one that
case
we have
coming
on the
due.
agenda. I
Okay,
think we got it
okay.
mixed up. It's Maggie Robinson. She,
Yeah.
you may be familiar with her. She's technically a county appointee as well.
Yes, I know who
So it was
Maggie
the
is.
county ones.
Yeah, well, I always ask when you see that split, because it
yeah.
tends to be along city, county. Thank you for
I wonder
clarifying.
if Casey would have agreed.
Yeah.
Okay, I have Counselor Bengal next.
Yeah, so if you listened or went to the TMAPC meeting, Gene Bullmeyer said this is most likely not the highest and best use of this property right now, which I totally agree with. But, as I stated earlier, I have an affordable complex that is being built next to a mature housing development. The Eastland Park community is concerned about an affordable apartment complex being built in an area where it's been zoned since 1970. So it may not be the intent today to build housing on that, but you're baking in an exception for this zoning that stays with it.
Yeah.
So I don't understand the ask for exemption to multifamily if that's not the intent today. You're baking that in permanently for this area, so I don't understand why there's hesitation in allowing that. So that's really what I'm trying to wrap my head around. And then also at the TMAPC, I never heard anybody say anything about the council had adopted multifamily as part of
Right.
OL zoning. This was the very first application out of the box after we adopted that. So, as I said, the second development that came to the table, it was very clear, I had some public safety issues unless they were gonna designate one side of the street not being allowed for parking, where you couldn't park. I had some concerns about public safety vehicles getting through that corridor. I don't find any challenges here. So if we're looking at the future, my residents are having to deal with 50-year-old zoning decisions. So where's the exception I need to bake in here? It just doesn't make sense to me, and I need somebody to make that make sense to me. So, yeah, I agree. It's probably not the best use of it to build apartments there today, but I would also argue they're not gonna be affordable housing. They're gonna be all market level. So even if you built those today, the rents would not be cheap.
Yeah.
So I need somebody to make this make sense to me. It's not to be oppositional or obstinate, I just need to understand it. And I just haven't heard anything that makes sense.
Okay, I have Counselor Dutton and then Counselor Lakin.
Yeah, so I'm reviewing the backup material and the comments made by some of the residents. The comments are talking about issues that they're perceived. There's one person, Jana Patterson, that states an apartment complex with adults and children near a forbidden pond will only invite more of the same, indicating adults and children as possible renters. Also, Angela Wood basically states
Maybe just
verbatim.
quote them, don't do the names.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
no, it's okay.
Public record, it's in the backup.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's true, never
It's
mind.
in the backup.
Okay, in my head I was
So-
like, are these from emails? Never
No,
mind, go ahead.
they're all in, I'm.
Okay,
just
they put it
going
on the
through
record.
backup.
Off you
They're
go.
totally on the record.
Sorry, I was trying to be polite to them, but if they put it on the record, off you go. All
But
right.
most of the complaints
Yeah.
have to do with traffic, which is all over Tulsa. It has to do with parents picking up their children from school, which is all over Tulsa. I can vouch for that as well. They're talking about the lack of ability for emergency vehicles to get through during pickup hours. That's all over Tulsa. Kids probably could stand to walk home from school these days. Instead, they get picked up all the time. Rezoning to apartments will do nothing to improve the city of Tulsa. These are all statements that are covered with not wanting to say what they want to say. And that's that apartment dwellers are bad, to your point, Anthony, Counselor Archie. So also to follow up on what Counselor Bengel said about what Gene Bullmash stated, to further that, he stated he is generally not a fan of ODP restricting certain types of housing, because if everybody had their way, they would restrict certain types of housing in their neighborhoods. If every neighborhood did that, the city would not be able to build the housing that we all need to keep our city thriving. So putting restrictions on what people can do with their property and who they can sell to, and what they, that's really a hindrance to development and economic vibrancy as we go forward. So I'm still trying to make it make sense as well, and that I can't see anything in the comments from any of the citizens that really claim what the hardships would be, other than traffic. They're talking about a high crime. Well, that's everywhere, but our crime stats are low. And if the crime is so bad in this neighborhood, then maybe they need to get a crime watch situation going. So those are just my comments.
All right, I have Counselor Lakin.
4 quick points. I don't know if we're making any progress on helping any of us see a different position or perspective. So I will say that, and that's fine. That's why we're different people and represent different districts and other things. I will say, I think we came together really well with the 36th and Yale project. We weren't the counselor at that point, but we worked very hard in the stead of a counselor who wasn't working very hard to come up with an amicable solution. Sorry, you know.
It's just true, yeah.
Maybe focus on other things.
He's not watching. Somebody else.
An amicable solution to something that put something that was once more dense next to an established neighborhood. And I think we did pretty good there. We did increase the density, probably beyond what the neighbors wanted to, but we didn't increase it to the very maximum. And we did it through an ODP. That's what the neighbors are asking for here. It's still a lot more than they wanted to give, but I'm really proud of the neighborhood for giving it, the HOA leaders. To your point about OL zoning, I totally agree. Whenever I looked at the OL zoning, including residential, you know, it was already in there. It was just, you needed a coffee shop. If you had 14 units, you needed a coffee shop to be one of those units. So it seemed like we were almost already there, and my mistake, if you will, was looking at, we asked for maps. We said, tell us where all the office light is now, and I looked at it from that position of what could be affected based upon existing zoning, just as you've been talking about, not on presumed zoning.
Right.
To your other point, you know, I really like for neighbors to know what they're backing up to. So in the situation where you have neighbors who have been there for 50 years, or the zoning's been on the lot for 50 years, you know, it may go on for 50 years where there's never anything, but that ODP will still contain what can be produced on the lots. And the broker situation right now, the thing that causes me to want the ODP is that I'm not really worried about the Lombardis, but I am concerned about what happens after the Lombardis. You know, so they may say no higher density than the single family or the duplexes, but the next one could say that, or the next one after that could say that. So we have an opportunity to define what that zoning is now for those who may live there 50 years later. And somebody can undefine it as well for us in the future. That's the great thing about the ODP, is it can come through and it can be altered. And then with respect to traffic, I totally get it. I've said the same thing as you have, as we all have. It's like, it's just gonna be immaterial. It's, having sat in that traffic personally hundreds of times, I can guarantee you that it's a significant issue on that road right now. But it's mostly in Councilor Archie's district, so it's his problem with
I
it.
think, though, for the subjectivity of traffic coming from the I-95 corridor in the northeast, it's just.
I think it will add marginally, anything that goes in here will add marginally to that traffic, but I guarantee you what has been said is true about how horrendous the traffic is during certain parts of the day, not all times of the day. And I don't think we need a traffic study. Somebody asked for a traffic study at some point. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna have additional cars coming in and out. But I think office light generally is probably a suitable use for that property, given that most of the cars are gonna be in there and out of there in an hour's worth of time, let's say. So, and residential uses at the level that we're talking about aren't going to be substantial either. But traffic is a real issue. I know you have a
Councilor Beck.
Yeah, like I said, the issue for me when we're talking about the future, even though we're talking about housing is not the most, or apartment complexes are probably not the highest and best use of this right now. I go back to the 50-year-old zoning that my district has to deal with on a decision that was made 50 years ago, right? Should they now be able to come back to the table and say, I don't want those damn apartment complexes next to my housing because my property values are lower than that portion, or that parcel of property, and I should be able to make those same exceptions and have argument today for something that was made 50 years ago? Should we come back to the table and reconsider what zoning looks like after certain periods of time? Because, as I said, the dynamic of my district has changed significantly over the last 30 years. I'm very cognizant of that, and so I know that there's older housing stock in most of my district, and so those property values are significantly lower. So when you build an affordable housing development next to a mature neighborhood where their houses may sell for $150,000, to them, when they come to the table and say that's going to affect their property value, it's gonna have a different meaning and a different context than if somebody in that neighborhood, which if I'm looking at the map correctly, this is to what, the north and west, those properties with larger plots. I mean, what are those property values? So when we talk about housing, it has a different meaning and property values, and what I heard in the TMAPC did not sit well with me.
Yeah, no, well, you should finish before I jump.
Yeah, so I just wanna make sure that when you're talking about what people should expect, the people who bought these houses over here in Eastland Park did not expect an apartment complex to show up there. But now they're stuck with it because the zoning has been there for 50 years, and they're going to get that apartment complex whether they like it or not. How fair is that to them?
May I respond just
Yeah,
on that,
yeah.
on that point? I would just say, so these property owners bought next to AG and RS3 though, and so that's what they've expected for, I don't know, let's say 15 or 20
Right.
years, however long
since
Delaware
1970.
Point has been there. What's that?
So 55 years.
I would assume
I
this
mean,
zoning is from
yeah, this
1970
zoning's from 1970.
Oh, okay.
as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so same deal, so they backed up expecting single-family homes. And now, there's a developer there saying, oh, we want to do something different. So ultimately, it's up to the developer and us, and TMAPC, to come up with something that's suitable. That's why we're here. So they don't just get apartments put on them because of the existing zoning. They should just get RS3 based upon the existing zoning. But that's not what they're actually getting
Right.
in this scenario if we change it. So I think that's why they're down here trying to be as generous as possible, but also trying to protect their own interests too. And I know, like I said earlier, you're going to get all kinds of comments. We get all kinds of comments whenever we're down here. You just have to sift through those and focus in on the hearts of we have HOA leaders that have been very, very good and consistent in providing the kind of direction and support that have had to sift through those comments like we do.
But regardless of where it is in the city, I want to be fair and consistent.
Yeah. Hold on, I'll
That's
keep your list.
why I've supported ODPs in other districts,
Yeah.
because there are modifications that we have to make.
So I do want to mention.
We've killed this one.
Yeah, I know. I have two quick notes, and I've done it in Archie. Sorry, we've all had enough time to think more. I know time-wise, and I am so sorry. I just want to make sure people know that item 12 is pulled if you were waiting for item 12. I do want to say though, I do think when someone's next to open land, if it's not a nature preserve, then I don't think you can expect that you get to dictate what's going. If you're in a city or a growing city, unless you are literally next to something that's like some type of federally protected land or nature preserve, I just don't think that you can ever have a reasonable expectation that you get to expect the property to be exactly how it is in perpetuity. And then I think per Councilor Bengal's point, when something, 50 years later, all these folks who take issue today, a lot of them may not be alive by then, and then, we have to think generationally. And then my one other piece, when we talk about what happened with 36th and Braden, which I think we all agree, we're like, no one ever wants to litigate a property to that degree again, but we're doing it now. That's that downstream effect of what happens when we end up making a lot of concessions or making every single rezoning an immense negotiation between the property owner and the neighborhood in a really unproductive, kind of problematic way, where I think we get into micromanagement and a certain amount of government overreach, where we're just constantly nitpicking away at properties, and it sets that bad precedent. Like that developer, he was like, God, I don't know how much more I want to develop in the city because this was such a chore, and that's the thing that I think we just don't want to replicate, even when it's the developer saying, hey, I prefer this or prefer that. Whatever we can do to not push and pull developers throughout all of these things, and just have rezones be the straightforward of, hey, does it meet the comprehensive plan? Does it address city goals related to housing? You know, there's those core things. And of course, a lot of that gets muddied, of course, that the people who are usually protesting the thing are constituents whose votes we want every other year. So I understand the complexity there. But yeah, I really just do want to say, unless you're next to like an actual nature preserve, if there's open land near you and you're in a urban area, it's likely to get developed at some point. Okay, I have Councilor Dutton and then Archie. And, yeah, okay, or a golf course,
Well, I have a
yeah,
golf course that just got sold for housing,
Okay.
so.
yeah. So if someone would like
Might
to,
take 20 more
yeah,
years.
yeah, that's fair, or a golf course, yeah, nature preserve, golf course, you know, one of those types of things. All right, Councilor Dutton.
So I also want to talk about what Councilor Bangle and Councilor Bellis had mentioned about generational and 50-year plans. In regards to my own neighborhood, the house was bought in 1994, and in my neighborhood, there are several acreage lots, and then there are several half-acre lots as well. And so this isn't special to either just, you know, the south side or people. The mentality in my neighborhood has changed in that most of the people that owned the homes originally have all passed on, which is to the points that were made over here. And so, that being said, the homes are now being sold. We have a whole new housing development just down the street on very small yards. It's maybe a couple acres. We have 20 homes now that have been built there. Plus, we have apartment complexes that have been built around the area. So the fact that people aren't going to live forever, and to create policy or zoning policy that is going to be inflexible for generations to come, to me, is just not practical if you're talking economic development within a city. And so I just wanted to throw that in, that, you know, in my neighborhood, we're fine with separating lots and the housing that has been developed in the area. And we were zoned agricultural until 1998, so, you know, zoning changes. Zoning happens, housing happens, apartments happen, and they have to.
All right, Councilor Archie.
Thanks so much.
We probably have to move on.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate these comments. I do have to think to myself, someone had to zone the land that I live on right now, and if you go back in time, it probably wasn't zoned for me at some point. You know, we have to be people of progress. I understand that. To your point, Councilor Bengal, and to Gene Bullmash's comment, that if every neighborhood made, you know, refused to do zoning, you know, we wouldn't achieve our housing goals. I agree with that 100%, but every neighborhood doesn't. In fact, most neighborhoods don't protest. We give our residents the option of a protest petition for a reason, and I've got to think, when they are telling me something, they're saying, Anthony, these are the concerns. I could be like, no, you're saying one thing, but actually you're not saying that thing. You're saying something else that's, you know, something else. I don't trust the words that are coming out of your mouth. I don't trust the work that you've done. Maybe I'm not advanced enough to say I don't believe you quite yet. Maybe if I continue on, I can detect that. But when residents are telling me what they believe, and then they're backing it up with their actions to say, we're going to show you through the democratic channels that you've given us, I have to at least pause to say, how do I incorporate this feedback into the policy making? We're not technocrats.
That's where data comes in.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not like, oh, be quiet, people. We have the answers. We're the experts. Just let us, you know, construct your reality. The power belongs to the people, and so I have to try to incorporate their, you know, input. I think there's a compromise that could be reached, maybe by going back to the original ODP. that would get us down the road toward our housing goals, but also make residents feel respected and heard through using the legitimate metrics, legitimate channels that we've given them. And so that's what I'm kind of thinking.
Counselor Lincoln?
Yeah, I have something that will make us all wish that we had our hour
They're
back.
pulling it?
Yes.
Okay.
So he called, that's why I stepped out, sorry that I stepped out while you were talking. But he's asked that the item be pulled so that it's not up for consideration. He sent you some kind of text or email on this issue as well.
So they're just fully withdrawing, or they're asking not to be heard tonight?
What's wrong?
They're fully withdrawn.
So, all right.
Well, we
But-
can all send him a bill. For billable hours.
Confirm all of that
Okay.
with him, and then if there's any difference, then let us know ASAP, otherwise we'll just withdraw this from the agenda for tonight.
Okay, in that case, I think we've
Let's
all had
go-
a rich
we can move-
philosophical
Interesting
discussion.
conversation.
You know, that was the friends we made along the way. All
We
right.
can move the clock back to 10:45 if you
Just
want
time
to.
to work that way.
All right, I'll double check that and let you guys know if we hear anything.
So now,
Yeah.
Well, they can still build houses. Okay, so we are on agenda item. All right, we are on agenda item, I don't even know what, is it 8? It's 8. All right, ordinance ZCA 37, amending the City of Tulsa zoning code, Title 42. Oh, this is like the whole overhaul of stuff.
Right, we're only
Okay.
gonna talk about one of those things.
All right, this is just a big overhaul of stuff. Which one?
Right, so we're only gonna talk about which chapter's that in?
Chapter 65.
65, so we're only gonna talk about one issue, drive-through screening. There's a lot that we talked about, I know you were like super excited about the long presentation last week, but, but we're not doing that again. So there was one that, we were asked to come back for, and this is drive-through screening. This is a little different, this is something that we are trying to problem solve through based on some past, situations we've had. So Daniel is the one who's done all this research, he's gonna talk you through it.
Good morning. So this conversation will be drastically different from the one you just had. So this is regarding drive-throughs on corners. Right now, we do not allow drive-through facilities to face streets. And there have been several variance requests over the past few years for drive-throughs on sometimes interesting lots that they feel like they can't fit the drive-through in any way except facing the street. And those typically get approved, but there aren't any sort of robust landscape requirements to help protect the view of the traffic on the street from cars queuing in the drive-through, and often there's headlights shining in people's faces. So
Can I pause you just for 1 second? So the drive-through window facing the street, the drive-through,
It's like the exit with the car's headlights, right? Is that what you mean?
So it
yeah,
could
help
be.
me, help me understand
It can
what
be
the.
both, the window or any part of the drive-through aisles. So as and I've got some examples I'll show you
Okay. The
pictures
here in
are
a second.
Yeah. Still
So
trying to wrap my head around what we don't allow.
So right now, we don't allow any part of a drive-through facility, which includes the aisle, the window, the ordering station, to face the street. So because we end up with things like this, now this existed prior to our landscape chapter being adopted in 2018 or 19. But this is often what we get. So this shows that full length of the drive-through aisle, the windows, and there's nothing to block the view of the cars that are lined up at the order station. Their headlights shine at people on the street, which is exactly what happens in a lot of cases. And there's no landscaping here. We do have landscape standards now, but they're pretty minimal when it comes to parking lots and drive-throughs. Here's another example. This is a kind of tight lot next to St. John, and Wendy's rebuilt, and they went through the variance process, got approved, And they have a couple of trees, and they did have some shrubs planted in the front, but those quickly died before they got larger than they were when they were planted. And then we end up with some situations like this where a drive-through may face some homes across the street as part of the neighborhood. And you can see here there are 2 small trees, but nothing else really to block the view. So we looked at what other places have on the books, and some local places, Owasso, Broken Arrow, Norman, have some options for these types of situations with parking lots and drive-throughs. And we looked at other cities across the country too. So, also here's an example. This went through the variance process and was approved, and they actually do maintain their landscaping. So this is a better example that exists here locally.
And a good reminder that it's almost lunchtime.
Yes. Sorry for all the restaurants in this slideshow. And then, so I went through and also looked at all of the headlight heights for the most popular cars being sold in the country, and then said, okay, if we had a low wall that was 30 inches, how many headlights would that actually cover? Which vehicles would be covered?
See, look where that mirror is gonna hit that person too.
I was gonna say something, yeah, very good.
Too soon.
Yeah.
And in Oklahoma, headlights are subject to a 54-inch maximum height above the ground. Now, we all know that gets violated when people lift their vehicles and things, but generally a 3 to 4 foot wall would cover most of those. So here's some examples in other cities where they have made allowances for these types of uses, but with some enhanced screening requirements. So here's North Carolina, Gilbert, Arizona. This one is in Southern California. And even though the headlights and cars are still there, they're screened because they have either a wall or a berm plus the landscaping. This one is in Norman.
Not great, but better.
It is better.
Some very scenic drive.
Can I ask, were those
So-
intentionally implemented as part of their zoning?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's what this would do.
Mm-hmm. So what we're proposing is to require a wall that's 3 to 4 feet high, plus trees and shrubs. So if someone plants something and it dies, we still have some sort of opaque surface there to prevent the headlights and all of those elements from facing the street.
In exchange for letting them do the drive-through
Yeah.
on the street, up the street.
Why
And-
is it 3 to 4 feet?
Well, so if we go back to the headlights, so 36 to 48 inches covers a lot of the headlights. 30 inches doesn't cover very much except for small sedans. What I've seen from other cities, they say 3 to 5 feet. It just provides some flexibility for the design, but basically anywhere within that 12 inches would be okay. So if,
Am I not just going to create a 3-foot wall because it's less expensive?
maybe, they could also have a scalloped edge design where it has peaks and valleys.
But it can't be taller than 4 feet?
Couldn't be taller.
Why?
So we're requiring that they're made out of masonry materials, and so they would be completely opaque. Anything taller than 4 feet really gets to feel more like an enclosed space.
Hiding place.
I wouldn't be able to see over it,
So,
short people.
But no, I see what you mean. That would also.
Yeah.
so it's just
close
kind
off
of a
landscape.
reasonable
Okay.
limit on the height there. But requiring all 3 is really the most effective way of screening these from the public right-of-way. And I put together this example to show a 3-foot section and a 4-foot section, and then 2 different size vehicles, and the trees and landscaping.
Any questions on this?
So the portion to the right is the 4-foot section?
Yeah.
obviously. Why wouldn't we just designate it as being 4 foot?
Is
So
that like a
given the
cost
option of
related
3 to
thing?
4.
Onerous on them to build
Well,
that
couldn't
extra
it also vary on the height of,
Or the elevation?
the
Of the
elevation of where it's at? I think that has to be considered as well. I'm only thinking in terms of like Colorado Springs, in Albuquerque, where different elevations constitute different heights of barriers.
I do like the wave or the undulation or whatever, that
That's a
would,
good
that would
design
be
also.
allowed, so there's some kind of flow to a wall perhaps.
Yeah,
If you just establish it at 3 or 4, then you just end up with
a straight line.
linear walls.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the only reason.
Yeah,
That's
that's fine.
what stood out to me in that explanation.
Okay, thanks, that was really clarifying. Any other,
Yeah, that's a
The only
lot.
reason why I ask that is because if the intent is to block the lights, and
Oh, no,
I
that's
think
right.
as we look at lights today, they're more intense.
yeah, it's, yeah.
That's where I was going to.
Yes.
Originally. I
Okay,
get it.
thank you for that. All right, we are on,
Because they're smarter than.
we're on item 9,
Not on it.
rezoning application Z7827 from RS3 to R5 for property located north of the northeast corner of East 48th Street North and North Iroquois Avenue, requested by Lakeisha M. Smith, in Council District 1.
Okay, so the next two are pretty straightforward, so. This lot, this is a pretty unique lot, it's a double frontage lot, it's about 3/4 of an acre. Right now it's zoned RS3, she wants to rezone to RS5 to do, cottage house development. So, don't have any, and she even said at the planning commission that her intent is to do 400 square foot homes. So, so anyway, of course, we have rules in the zoning code about cottage house development taking place. We didn't have any public comments on this. You know, it's a nice big lot, and it's in the middle of a neighborhood, and so, yeah.
Any questions for anyone? All right. Okay, we are on item 10. Rezoning application Z7828 from RS3 to R5 for multiple lots located east of the southeast corner of East 81st Street South and South Evanston Avenue, requested by Deluxe Properties, Council District 2. TWBC voted 8-1.
Some of you will be familiar with this little neighborhood, little duplex neighborhood that we have on the south side of 81st Street. We've had several other RS5 have come in before. This was built originally as a duplex community. This particular piece we're looking at today, though, this has always been vacant. This has never had duplexes on it. They just want to be able to do duplexes and have smaller lots to do that. I'll show you, I have there you go. So, so they want 6 lots. They need to, in order to get to this size of lot, they need to get to the RS5. They'll still have to go to the Board of Adjustment to ask for duplexes. They're not allowed by right even in RS5. And this is the rendering, and if you're familiar with the newest duplexes that are at the far west end of that neighborhood, very nice looking duplexes. So,
Burned twice right there.
Yeah, it's
say what?
They've only been caught on fire twice
Oh,
right there.
well, they were replaced.
Yeah.
Yeah, by the new ones, but yes.
Little Tulsa history. Okay, anything on this one?
Right.
Okay, all right, we are on agenda item 11. Ordinance approving and adopting the Southern Villa District Economic Development Project Plan pursuant to the Oklahoma Local Development Act, designating establishing 3 ad valorem and sales tax increment districts temporarily identified in the project plan as increment districts A, B, and C. And you all get the general idea from there. So we could just, I know we have, yeah, I think it's partner Tulsa and, is anyone presenting on this one? If you all want to, or we could just talk, we could just talk amongst ourselves. All right, we have partner Tulsa and Aaron Persley with us.
We will be here for moral support. I think at this point, we've talked about this project ad nauseum. You all know the details, the importance of it. In fact, I'd rather pass to Councilor Archie if he had a few things to say about the
Well,
project.
absolutely, well, and I'll be brief as well, but when I think about the Southern Villa TIF, I think about a partnership between the city of Tulsa, our esteemed developers, which are here today. At some point, we might bring them up if you want to ask them questions. But a partnership between the city of Tulsa and the Muskogee Creek Nation for more housing, for more retail, and it just represents the potential for economic revitalization at 81st and Lewis. I moved to Tulsa about 20 years ago and lived at 81st and Lewis when I moved to the city. And if you go to that corridor, you've seen just the economic decline there, but there are other property owners that have contacted me, and in response to this, this potential TIF and the projects coming from it, they have expressed that they're gonna double down on their investments in their property. And so we're already beginning to see some of this bloom happen. We brought together so my role in the TIF project, when you begin to establish these things, there's a committee of folks that are gathered together, all the folks that collect property taxes, like the library, the school system, the health department. They come together and they communicate about what the project is, and they have input on it. I had representatives from ORU and Nordagio's Cafe and University Village also sat on the board, and it was back and forth, it was give and take, and we have something that I think we can be proud of, and I think ultimately 200,000 square feet of retail and nearly 700 units of housing, and so all apartments as well, and so I support apartments. I used to live in an apartment, and I support retail. I think about jobs and economic development. So that's my portion of it. Do you want to bring up the developers to talk about what they want to put on there? No?
We've gone through this thing.
Okay.
Yeah, we've talked about this project numerous times. I don't want to go through a whole display of what the project is. You all know what it is at this point. Just to piggyback on Councilor Archie, a great project, a great partnership between the nation and the city to bring this thing to fruition. I'm excited about it. I want to thank the nation and developers for all the support and work they've done to make this happen. So that's my only thing I'd like to say. And
Councilor Lakin?
How soon will we see things coming out of the ground? What's the timeline?
So the expectation from the developer is, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but the first half of 26 is when we can start to see things at the earliest.
Second half of 26,
Second
but the
half.
very early half.
Good.
Very early
That's
portion.
exciting.
With completion in a couple of years, or does
It's
it look
about
like?
a 23-month development cycle to have,
Okay.
finish outs in the apartments and tenants in.
That's great.
3 phases to the entirety of the area.
Great.
Okay, good. Sounds good. Anyone
Let's
have
get to
any?
work.
Yeah. Anyone have other inquiries? All right. Well, on that note, since I was told 13, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.